For hundreds of years, the continent of Sarakaros has been a land of unparalleled savagery and barbarism, earning it the title, the Continent of Savagery. The continent is hot, and no, that has little to do with the volcanoes or the Anoth-Burn Kingdom, lorded over by a monarchy of fire-breathing red dragons. The few civilizations that have established themselves are constantly on the brink of war, either with each other or with the scattered minor factions. The existence of large numbers of ruins across Sarakaros stand as a testament to the constant strife in this landmass. Often, these attacks are for the few resources available in Sarakaros. Other times, war is enacted to wipe out some faction. Several independent city-states do exist, each desperately trying to etch out and maintain their own image, even if that means resorting to similar savagery against the other factions. But there are whispers of discontent amongst the factions. In a desperate gambit to attempt to get away from the ongoing strife, a small contingent of settlers emerged from some of the smaller factions, an independent force interested in attempting to change the face of Sarakaros, or at the very least, to establish a safe place away from the constant fighting. This group aimed to establish a new city-state in a somewhat isolated area, deep in the arid wilderness of the Central Mesas. This stop, full of shops for adventurers, is the Archwood Nexus. G'day mates, my name is Mordecai. Let's cut the narrator for the moment, as the lore I just dropped is to do with a homebrew setting that I have been working on. And for this month's Dungeon Jam, following the theme of stops and shops, I thought it would be a fun idea to explore the one place on this otherwise hostile continent where the party can go to resupply regardless of what has transpired between them and the various factions of Sarakaros. So if they somehow survive enraging the dragon royalty of the Anoth-Burn Kingdom, or slightly irritate one or perhaps a few archmages from the Zaltean Arcanocracy, they'll be fine here, for a while. But I also wanted to make it a bit more generalized so that the Archwood Nexus can be used in other settings. And so we shall look at the location, the history, and some of the shops that are available for adventurers to peruse. The early history of the Archwood Nexus is well documented within the main library of the city, but for the purposes of brevity, I'll provide a summary. The city itself is built primarily on the split trunks of a once magnificent and towering greatwood tree. Greatwood trees in my setting are somewhat like gigantic redwood trees. They're big enough that, if given the proper time, you could establish and build entire fortresses within them. However, they are quite rare, and always have a guardian dryad, though only some of the greatwood trees in the world have a more direct connection to the Feywild. In the past, this particular tree was struck by a highly destructive bolt of lightning that segregated it into 3 distinct trunks, right down the middle. Whether this was a freak event or the result of a war amongst the factions, the dryad of the tree isn't saying. When the settlers had arrived with the intention of establishing the Archwood Nexus, they were concerned about having to negotiate with the tree spirit. But considering that they had nowhere else they could risk going, they strove to see what agreement could be struck. In exchange for being able to establish their settlement within the tree trunks, the Dryad insisted that they provide a similar sanctuary to travelers and outsiders, in a manner akin to how the Dryad was prepared to offer sanctuary to the settlers. With that agreement established, they began to build the Archwood Nexus, centered on the fractured greatwood tree. The Archwood Nexus is located at the end of a long and winding river, leading from the Desalos mountain range through the desert surrounding the dry, hot, and arid central mesas. This river culminates in an oasis adjacent to the tree that gives this city its identity. Despite the arid conditions surrounding the city, the average temperature and humidity around and within the Nexus are kept at a temperate degree year-round by the influence of the greatwood tree's dryad. Thus, the agriculture for the city is in a constant state of ideal growing conditions, resulting in plentiful and varied food. The greatwood tree's 3 split trunks house a variety of shops and accommodations for weary travelers and adventurers. In the middle of the central platform that connects the 3 trunks is a teleportation circle for the city. This central platform is connected to the ground surrounding the tree by 3 huge sets of circular stairs that encircle the greatwood tree. Patrolling around the city are the Archwood Guardians, and forces that consist of a mix of warriors and druids. There are some more mundane buildings built around the base of the Greatwood tree, however I want to focus on 3 of the shops housed within. The first of our shops is called the Hunter's Exquisition. It is an equipment store that deals in standard adventurer gear, however the store itself and its business model are not exactly conventional. The interior shelving behind the counter is a honeycomb design for displaying and storing the various supplies, ranging from regular bolts and arrows to backpacks and quivers. There is a display behind the counter as well, showcasing an extremely exotic longbow, with maplewood limbs and a central metal handle with an embedded glowing ruby. However, there is seemingly no bowstring at all. Anyone who takes a moment to take a more in-depth look at the bow, or can see into the ethereal plane, can discern that the bowstring is ethereal in nature, hence why it doesn't seem to be there. The display also features a pair of scimitars and scabbards. Which brings us to the storekeeper for the Hunter's Exquisition. The shopkeeper is Artemis, a Thri-kreen who is as enigmatic as he is charismatic. Due to how difficult non-Thri-kreen tend to find pronouncing his actual name, and how similar his name is to the word in common, he is more than happy to be referred to as Artemis. On his left antenna is what he refers to as his translator, an arcane device that allows him to speak in common to most adventurers and travellers, and to the residents of the Archwood Nexus. In the presence of other Thri-kreen, he will respectfully yet briefly disable his translator so he can share his greetings in the Ancestry's native insectoidal chittering. He sells the store's gear at roughly 20% discounted prices, rounded up to the nearest gold, silver or copper. You might think that he's selling terrible quality gear that will disintegrate the moment it leaves the shop, but that's not how Artemis operates. All of the gear he's selling is, at worst, in excellent condition, and he is willing to appraise the quality of the gear the party has. If he finds the gear to be in terrible condition, he's eager to buy it at an appropriate amount for how damaged the gear is, but will repair those items for the equivalent adjusted price instead. He will repair gear for cheaper than purchasing new gear from him. Being a Thri-kreen, Artemis values what it means to be a hunter, on the hunt for a challenge or for worthy prey. The challenge that he finds here in the Archwood Nexus is in maintaining a successful business. But he appreciates that his clientele are on hunts of their own, be that hunting down wyverns or something else. Talking with him about why he purchases bad quality gear from adventurers, his initial answer is that, in his opinion, adventurers shouldn't be using terrible quality gear unless there is no other option. Pressing him further about this will invoke a persuasion check, with a success getting him to open up about how he finds value in being able to restore that gear for his own personal hunts, outside of when he's running his business. The second store worth examining is the aptly named Pines of Archwood, the most renowned restaurant and inn of the Archwood Nexus. So renowned that it has been rumoured for quite some time that even the Red Dragon monarchy of the Anothburn Kingdom had sent one of their own to dine there. Regardless, the food here is cooked to perfection, and the accommodation is more than comfortable, if a bit on the expensive side. It is built into a carved out section, roughly in the middle of the northernmost trunk of the Greatwood tree. The establishment is ran by Harrison Mildbluff, a chap who could be described as fair-minded and easy to get along with. He does, however, have a tendency to break up any bar fights immediately. He does have a few others under his employ at the Pines of Archwood, however his name is the one that is brought up the most often, since he is the face people recognise and talk about. If the party does stay overnight at this particular inn, they'll find the rooms include miniature mailboxes they can use to receive mail whilst they are staying. And when they wake up in the morning, there's a complimentary goodberry awaiting them in that mailbox. These goodberries are grown locally by the Greatwood Tree's Dryad, though whether the party discover this or realise there's an agreement going on in the background is up to the party. Spoilers, it's an agreement between Harrison and the Dryad, reserved mainly for respectful clientele. In other words, being too noisy or being a nuisance will result in there being no goodberry for that particular patron. It is also worth mentioning that prior to running the Pines of Archwood, Harrison was something of a berserker, a rather troubled individual who, in battle, liked to throw anything that wasn't nailed down. And if you could pry it loose, it wasn't nailed down in his book. We don't want to annoy or otherwise upset Harrison. The final shop of interest for this primer is known as the Next Quaff. This quaint little store found on the central platform's eastern side specialises in alchemy, dealing in a wide variety of potions and brewing ingredients. On the outside, the store has an elegant sign with the store's name written on it. However, a closer glance at the surrounding area could reveal that the crowds are sidestepping this particular store. The Next Quaff is ran by Ellison Solana, an elf lady who is a bit socially shy but fairly easy to get along with, so long as none of the patrons attempt to steal any of the potions on display. Despite her extensive knowledge and experience with alchemy, this is seemingly to the detriment of everything else in her life. Her store is a jumbled display, with several of the empty vials on the shelves perched precariously. A stiff breeze would be all it would take to turn the floor into a walking hazard. The organisation is also rather scatterbrained, with several vials of acid placed next to healing potions as a frequent occurrence, and a showcase of the disarray. If there is some pattern of organisation to the store, such would be hard to discern, but Ellison knows where everything is. All that said, she would be willing to negotiate for a permanent discount on her wares if her patrons would be willing to help her reorganise her store so that it's far less chaotic. However, if the party returns the next day, she could be persuaded to confess that she is rather paranoid about thieves. Prior to her moving to the Archwood Nexus, she lived in a far-off city to the east, in the jungle region that houses the Overcast faction. Theft was rather commonplace in that particular city, and she isn't exactly succeeding at getting rid of the habits that kept her business afloat whilst living there. And that, mates, wraps up this primer about the Archwood Nexus, a stop full of shops for weary adventurers and wandering travellers. I do apologise for being a bit late with this video, as I ran into some production issues that are best left unmentioned. Regardless, a huge shout out to both Mystic Arts and Nagobi for hosting and running Dungeon Jam. I also have to give thanks to my audience for watching this video. Please do check out the other stops and shops made as part of this month. The playlist will be compiled at the end of this month, at which point I'll add the link to that down in the description below. If you want to include the Archwood Nexus as part of your campaign or setting, I'll have a link to the PDF in the description as well, when that's finished. And if you want to contribute your own shop ideas that would be thematically in line with this stop, leave a comment down below and I might do a follow-up video. Again, thanks for watching, mates, and I shall see you all next time.